Does V8 actually feel harder than V7? After testing V7s across the Kilter board, 2016 Moonboard, and TB2, I climbed on 15 V8s to see if the same trends held from the last experiment, and whether grades really get linearly harder as they go up. Spoiler, on one board, V8s were actually easier. Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, in a previous video I tested how reliable grades are by trying 20 V7s across 4 different setups. The results showed that even within the same grade, my experience varied quite a bit. The 2016 Moonboard and the Kilter board were easiest for me, and the TB2 was by far the hardest. So I wanted to continue the experiment and answer 3 new questions about grades. First, if I climbed 5 more V7s on each board, would the same trends hold? Second, at V8, would the board rankings change, or would the TB2 still be the hardest? And third, we often expect difficulty to increase linearly with grades. But when comparing V8 to V7 on each board, would V8 actually be harder? A quick note about V8. In each app, there's actually 2 European grades that fall under it, 7B and 7B+. This video covers 7B, and then I'll do a part 2 with 7B+. I tried the top 5 7Bs in each app at 40 degrees, gave each an RPE rating, and had a limit of 10 tries on each. And lastly, a little bit about me, your test subject. Hi, I'm Juliet. I've been climbing for 21 years. I have climbed over 100 V7s outside, as well as over 100 V8s, with my top bouldering grade being V12. And I come to you standing at 5 feet 0 inches tall with a 5'2" arm span. Let's see what happened in this experiment and on which board V8 was actually easier than V7. We are kicking off round 1 on the Kilter board with hammer drop, and full disclosure, this is a boulder that I've done previously. I did it at the beginning of this year. I looked it up and it was in February, so about 10 months ago. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to repeat it within the 10 tries. The crux move was feeling really hard, and for me, it's just a matter of just jumping as hard as I can and hoping I catch it. So I was psyched when I was able to stick it. This is the only 7B I've tried and done on the Kilter board though, so all the other ones were new. As I mentioned in my last video, the 2016 Moonboard is the board I have the most experience on. I spent a lot of time climbing on it in 2020 and 2021, so this climb, hangboard not required, is one that I did back in 2020, and I knew that I couldn't span the first move and had previously used this match beta, so I went ahead and tried it from the start, and then for my second attempt just ran the rest of it to make sure I knew what I was doing. And then I tried the beta that I used back in 2020, which was this high left foot. And actually back in 2020, I'm pretty sure doing it this way gave me a pulley injury. I caught it with 2 fingers. It was kind of ridiculous. So I tried it that way a couple times, but realized that I wouldn't be able to do it that way now, 5 years later. So I ended up finding this drop knee position, which felt way more stable and consistent. Up for round 1 on the TB2 was layaway, and I had a very good flash go on this one, but then I made a dire mistake. I didn't double check if it was matching or no matching, and I had just assumed it was no matching since a lot of the classics on the TB2 are no matching. I almost saved it, but didn't quite, and then I had a couple of slip-ups on attempts 2 and 3, and finally had a good go on the 4th attempt. Onto round 2 for the Kilter board with just a day. I absolutely butchered this sequence. I'm not sure what the original setter intended, so I'm sorry for that. And this is as good a time as any to bring up that I had a number of in-depth discussions about matching on the Kilter board with a number of you all on Instagram, because the matching, no matching icon is a newer feature, but we ultimately concluded that there's not a great way for a user to discern whether or not a setter intended no matching beyond that icon if they set it in the earlier days. And the official rules of the Kilter board is that matching is allowed, so that is what I'm doing. I am climbing these boulders in the way that works best for me. I had never tried this next Moonboard boulder before, and I actually really liked this one because there were just really specific ways that you had to grab each of these pinches, and I find that figuring out that kind of micro beta is really satisfying and fun. So I just used my initial attempts to try and work through the moves. The combination of getting this initial right cross into this bigger dead point was definitely the crux sequence. I ended up working this jump move quite a bit in isolation and finally kind of figured out the movement I needed with my hips to make it work. And then I used my remaining attempts to try it from the start. On this last boulder of round 2, my initial read from the ground was a little different than what I ended up doing. I thought I needed to get this high heel hook, but I was actually able to reach from the lower feet. And I was able to get my first flash of the experiment. This next Moonboard climb I had also never been on before, and I do want to acknowledge that the tags are sticking out of my shorts for the entirety of this Moonboard session, which I was absolutely mortified to find when I was reviewing the footage, but alas, we cannot refilm this experiment, so we'll just move on. Anyway, this last move proved to be very challenging for me. I think it had to do with where the feet were positioned. I was definitely making progress and getting closer, but it was just a little too hard for me to do within the 10 tries. So for my last attempt, I just figured why not try it from the start and see where I get to. Bill Clinton Sachs Fair. I'm very familiar with this climb and historically I've had a lot of trouble with this last move, so that's where I started my attempts. I won't bore you, they all looked about the same, just trying the last move in isolation. So similar to the last boulder, for my 10th attempt, I just tried it from the start. Trouble in paradise on the TB2 after things were going so smoothly. This boulder felt like a step above the others that I had been trying. I think it really had to do with just the feet feeling quite low for me. For this beginning sequence, I think it's pretty workable with alternate beta. But then this large move in the middle was one that just didn't feel very close. I tried it a couple of different ways. Would definitely have to project that move quite a bit to see if it's possible. Then I just went back to the beginning to try and make some links there. Closing out the final round on the Kilter board with one more rest day, please. I really enjoyed this climb. I was pretty happy with the shorty beta that I found with this high foot. This one seemed like just really classic Kilter board style, just kind of throwing yourself around. Finishing off the final round on the Moonboard, I will say I used some very terrible beta on my first try. And I went through a couple iterations of different beta. I believe that this jump is the more standard beta. And while I was able to stick it in isolation, I think I was getting pretty tired by the end of the session here. And so when I tried it with that beta from the start, I wasn't able to stick it. After a couple times falling on that move from the start, I reworked the beta and found a method that felt a lot easier to me. And so once I changed methods, the whole boulder felt a lot more manageable. This last TB2 boulder was pretty straightforward and enjoyable, and I was happy to end the experiment on a good note. Let's break down the results. Remember, there were 3 different questions that I wanted to answer. First, if I climbed 5 more V7s on each board, would the same trends hold? As with last time, I used a ranking system across 3 different metrics where fewer points meant the board was easier and more points meant it was harder. As we can see, even after doubling the dataset, the rankings stayed the same. The 2016 Moonboard and the Kilter board were the easiest, and the TB2 across all 3 metrics was by far the hardest. So the first experiment did a good job of demonstrating the relationship between the boards at V7 for myself. Next, at V8, would the board rankings stay the same? Here's where things got interesting. At 7B, the Kilter board remained the easiest, while the TB2 dropped down to a close second. The 2016 Moon shot way ahead, becoming by far harder than the other two boards. This was a major shift in the results from V7 to V8. Lastly, is V8 harder than V7 on each board? This question had the most unexpected results. When comparing V8 to V7, I only counted V8s that I did within 5 tries to keep the parameters the same between the grades. On the Kilter board, we did see an increase in difficulty. I sent 1 fewer climb, I took about 1 extra attempt per send, and my RPE slightly increased. The jump between grades was there, but it felt pretty manageable. On the Moonboard though, there was a stark contrast. I sent 0 7Bs within 5 tries, and so this was more like a spike between V7 and V8. Lastly, for the TB2, I sent a higher percentage of 7Bs within 5 tries. I took on average fewer attempts and had a slightly lower RPE. V7 was harder across all of the metrics. 7B ended up being easier, which is a complete reversal of what you would expect. Why were the results this way? Well, there's no ignoring the relationship between morphology and grading, so it's important to take a look at who is setting and grading these climbs. In a dataset collected by Kimbrough Moore of almost 1,600 Moonboard benchmarks, 93.6% of them were set by males. If we look at a breakdown of those male setters, about 92% of them were from North America, Europe, and Australia, where the average height is collectively between 5'9" and 5'10". I think it's fair to say that at 5'0", I am well shorter than those who are creating these climbs. The climbs that I didn't do in this experiment did have pretty large moves, and while some of them felt workable, the movement ends up being different than someone who's closer to this average height. For example, watch Davis here, who is 5'9", doing the same move as me at 5'0". My perception of difficulty is going to be a pretty different experience, and I think it's a good reminder of how subjective grades are. Grades aren't objective truths because they just can't be. Instead, grades are reference points created by a specific population of climbers, and the further outside of this morphology you fall, the more your experience with grades is going to vary. I'm pretty curious how part 2 of this V8 experiment is going to go. I'm going to get to trying those climbs. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.